Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel called The Upper Room. And the Upper Room is where Jesus would meet with his disciples to commune and give them messages. And today's message is on what is your attitude towards God? And you might say to yourself, it's great. But the Lord looks at the heart, and our attitude towards God is going to determine how committed we are to God, and if we have wholehearted devotion to the Lord. And the attitude towards God reveals if we fear God. And what does it mean to fear God? It means to utmost respect Him completely. And when we respect Him completely, we are believing and having faith in the power and might of who God is. And so in the last days, in 2 Timothy 3:5, people are going to have a form of godliness, but denying the power that having faith in the Lord has. So, and this happens when people only identify with God halfway. And so we're going to go through a series of scriptures today looking at the examples throughout the Bible and into the last days, which is now, that we're living in, of what it looks like to only halfway identify with God. And we're going to bring scripture into it. And so first, what causes people not to be devoted to God? There's two things that I highlighted. One is a lack of faith in His power and nature. So when people have a lack of faith in God, in His power and nature, they're not fully devoted to God because they lack understanding of who God is. And the second one is the lack of identity in who they are because of the Lord that they believe in. So it's a lack of identity in who they are in the Lord. And so when you have faith in God and you submit your life to Christ, God's Spirit is in you, so you have His Spirit in you, so God is living inside of you. So if people have a lack of identity in who the God is that's living inside of them and what that means for them. And so we can look at some examples from the Bible to help understand what this looks like. And first I want to go into 1 Samuel. I think it's a really powerful example of Israel was a nation who was already chosen by the Lord, and God Himself chose Israel to be set apart from every other people, to be holy, to be pure, to be made right, to be righteous. And so God Himself, that made the heaven and earth and everything in it, visible and invisible, chose this nation, this people, Israel, to be separated and set apart. So He chose them already to be holy and set apart. And so that's even mentioned in Leviticus 20:26. And so in 1 Samuel 8:19-20, we see how the people that were chosen to be set apart by God were devoted to God, but the God who rescued them from Egypt. So they also had evidence in God's power because God rescued them out of the whole nation of Egypt from bondage to slavery to sin. And so God performed so many miracles that were powerful miracles, plagues to the Egyptian nation. He sent all these things in order to cause Pharaoh to see the power of the Lord, that God's hand was on Israel, and God wanted Israel to Himself so that they could worship Him, and so that they could be free. And so they had all these evidences of the Lord's power at work. However, it got to a point where they, in 1 Samuel 8:19-20, they started looking around at the other nations and the fact that the other nations had a king, and they began to believe that they needed a king themselves. So what this says, I'm always interested to think about what the why behind things and what it means. And if people felt like they needed a king and needed to be like other nations, that's in essence saying that basically saying that what they felt like they had wasn't enough. So they didn't feel like they were enough. They needed to be like other nations. So when there's this belief within that they're not enough, it's driving their behavior, and it's also driving their identity in their lack of ability to see their identity and who they are in God. Because if they really saw who they are in God, they would see that they were already a nation chosen to be set apart. They were already a nation that had every single ounce of power available to them in the Lord, which set them above conquering and more powerful than all the other nations who were relying on kings to rule them. But they still wanted a king. So in